What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV back here for another panel show. 1 week to go till the final in Bilbao. And we have got Shawnee, we've got Brains with us. Shawnee, how you doing, mate? Last time I saw you, we were in the Arctic Circle. Now back in England, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good, Ben. It's great to be back on with you guys, Simi and Gavin as well. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been with you guys, but yeah, it's not been that long since I last saw you, Ben, and it was a brilliant time then. Hopefully looking forward to a brilliant time today, and then more fun to come next week in Bilbao, mate.
Always a brilliant time when you're on here on the show. Brains, 1 week to go. You starting to get a few nerves now?
Yeah, but I feel like by the way, if this stream is 3 segments of talking about the Europa League and then Sim lining up his apology list, you will get no apology here from me. Not me, not today, not ever, not today, Satan. You will not get that today, nor never, Sim. Yeah, all good. Like I actually, for the I had a football game on, and I was just like so stressed about that Bodo game that I kind of like we had all stuff happening, and I eventually got into the pub, and we were 2-0 up and coasted, and I was like, oh man. And I think that kind of changed a little bit for me. I was like, you know what, like maybe it isn't. Maybe it is a case of like we just should enjoy the moment and like just not go into this. I mean, if it was up to Josh King, he'd have everyone going into this ready to kill themselves, thinking we don't have any good players, that we're going to get battered every minute of the game. Like, let's just enjoy it. We've got a good team. Let's just enjoy it. So
there goes the monetization within 65 seconds.
Cheers, Brains.
Well, you know what you're getting.
Look, let's talk about the big news of the day, which is obviously Kulusevski. It looks like he will be out for the final. They're saying it's it's a significant. Well, they're not saying it's a significant injury, but when you saw it, you were there, Sean, on the weekend. You just could tell, couldn't you, that it was going to be a bad one, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, it's very rarely you see a player go down and then get back up and try and then sit down again on the pitch, and then you see him again in 10 days, right? It just doesn't happen. So yeah. I knew that it was a very, very tall order to expect him back. And I spent the last week, or the last 3 days, racking my brains as to where we go from here, because the absence of Maddison and him, it makes it very difficult to know what the options are. How do you go about it? I did a video on my channel this morning. Normally my videos are like giving my opinions and asking for feedback, but this time I was like, actually, I need help, guys. I don't know where we go from here with regards to the options, right? Like you have, I don't know if this is part of the question straight away, but like there's options, but then none of them are great, if you play Bentancur in a more advanced role and you bring Pape Sarr in, I think that then you lose a hell of a lot. And if you do that, then you're going to need to rely on your wingers to both be sort of attacking down dual fronts, because if you haven't got the creativity through the middle, you're going to need to have that kind of touchline access. And if you're going to do that, then you're forced into even more sort of conundrums with regards, Brennan Johnson's not going to be able to provide you that outlet. And so does that mean that you start with Odegaard, who hasn't really, I'd say warranted it on merit at the moment? On the left-hand side, does it force you to play Sonny, he's played 20 minutes in 3 months or whatever? Like it's not great, mate. It really isn't great. And I was going into after Bodo, I was like, I don't really understand why everyone's so nervous about United. Like, yes, there's not much between the two teams, but ultimately we've beaten them 3 times this season. Andrew's not lost to Bodo in his time at Tottenham. So, there's loads of reasons why you should say, well, you can't expect an easy game in the final. But in terms of if you were told at the start of the season that you're 90 minutes away from lifting the second biggest European trophy that you can lift, and all you've got to do is beat a team that you've already beaten 3 times, everyone would have bitten your hand off for that scenario at the start of the season. But now, after this Decky news, I'm just like, it's deflating. Again, it raises questions as to why we were playing some of the players that played, and also as I say, I've got more questions than answers. I was really struggling to figure out what the right solution is now for Wednesday.
Well, there's a number of solutions that we can go to. I mean, when Kulusevski went off on the weekend, he moved Sarr into that position. Odegaard played there a bit in the second half. You've got Dom Solanke that could potentially drop back a bit and put Richarlison in the 9. You've got Tell that could potentially go there. You've got Sonny potentially that could go there as well. There's even a left field option of maybe playing Porro there and playing Spence at right back. So there are like options. Obviously, none of them ideal, but there are options. Brains, which one are you looking at?
I mean, first of all, like I love how Ange just on some point he's like kind of like knowledgeable of how people are viewing him, and he kind of but then on other things he's like, how have you not thought that someone's going to compile a video of all the times you've gone just a knock and then the player's out? Like the guy drops and then he tries to walk it off and go, like, that's not a knock. Anyone with a brain can tell he's in major trouble. Like he's out. Like everyone knows, and yet you've got this manager going, just a knock, just a knock, just a knock. Okay, he's out for like 4 months. Like, it does my head in. But that said, I actually don't think if you look at like how Solanke plays, like he plays deeper. If anything, we've been complaining that he isn't a fox in a box. I mean, I know he scored a couple tap-ins, but on corners and stuff, in gameplay, he actually takes up. He comes into that 10 space like a general 10, not the way Maddison plays it a little bit on the left. And Kulu never plays a 10 role. I've never seen him at Spurs play a 10 role. He's always an 8, or he glides over too much. He's always inverted on that side, or he plays a false 9 too high up. He doesn't really ever do the 10, or he just kind of plays as just in front of the double pivot defensively, and that's all right, where he just commits foul after foul after foul. So I think Kulu was probably one of the worst options for it anyway, like for how I want to see a 10 play. I think Solanke has all the makings of a 10, but also someone who can shoulder guys off the ball. Like Solanke, Kulu's been so weak there of late, just gets pushed off the ball, doesn't pass the ball, all things that a 10 needs in Spain. You have to see the pass. So I think Solanke does that ball through the line. Look at early in the season, the little plays through the line where he's putting people in. I think he does that. The difficult thing is, like what Sean's saying, is that you actually will then really rely on Sonny doing the run inward and just being at his absolute best. That's going to be the tough thing. I do think Johnson, I think is a must, just because he knows the roles of how to be defensive. And so I think you do play Johnson. I think you have Richie in the 9 just for Porro doing crosses against them. Like, I think you need that. And yeah, I think Solanke is the right option to do it. I think Sarr can do it as well, but I just don't think he's like the player who understands like the creative part of it. So Solanke is the guy for me. So I don't think that's that big a thing. I think as long as you're like super solid at the back and you have our kind of destiny, VDV, Romero and Porro, then Bentancur and Biz, I think it's not the biggest problem having Solanke adapting. The only problem is that he will have to take up more of the kind of track back defensive stuff. But actually, he did that all game against Man City. Like he's got that in it. He's got the tank to do it, and I'd say he's probably got more about his game to do it better than Kulu. So in some weird way, I think having Kulu out is a blessing in disguise, because he's been rat arse. He's been so bad for so long now. And I don't know how long we can keep saying this guy does 6-7 top games a season, and then we go, he's our best player. Like, we just call him our best player all the time. For me, it's madness. I just don't see it. So yeah, I think Solanke solves the problem. And then I think you just kind of make sure that you've got the wingers coming on to go nuts at a semi-weak Man United backline.
I think we almost need Kulusevski just to come out in the press and say, look, I'm always tired, guys, just to reverse the curse of when he said, I'm never tired. He's been tired ever since. What do you think, Sim? Do you feel like it is Solanke in the 10? Is that our best option?
I like that solution. I wouldn't actually mind Solanke in the 10 and maybe Son ahead of him, and maybe get some of that relationship going like he had with Harry Kane. I know Solanke's not quite a Harry Kane, but in terms of a kind of Kane and Son light, having Solanke dropping deep, doing what Brains was doing, you know, protecting the ball, shielding it, and then having Son run in on the last line. I kind of like the idea of that, although I am worried that if he was to play Son and Solanke together, he would have Son drop a bit deeper because that's what he's done previously, but I don't think that would be the right thing. I think I'd have Solanke drop it deep and have Son kind of on the last line. And even when United are coming onto us, you always have that kind of potential of Son attacking that space in behind, which we know he can be devastating when he's on form. The only thing is, again, he's not on great form at the moment. He's just coming back from injury. So maybe Richarlison would be the best bet. And I do like the idea of Porro whipping in crosses and Solanke and Richarlison kind of both there attacking, because I think we've seen United definitely in recent weeks struggling with those crosses in the box and struggling to deal with it. And I think having Richarlison and Solanke a dual threat there, doubling our chances of getting on the end of one of them, could really prove dividends. I think in a perfect world, in a weird way, if it had been more tried and tested, I think then the more logical solution probably would be to go to a back three, because that would probably work in all theory. In terms of we've got the players to do it, you get Porro and Doggy a bit further forward. The front three doesn't really change, and you just have Bentancur and Bissouma in a double pivot, and you add a centre back in Danso there in that back three. And it also kind of means you match up Man United. It means their wing backs are probably not going to get the space that they threaten to get in the kind of matchups that we're going to have, because Porro and Udogie, or especially Porro, likes to invert, which means when Man United are really stretching far out wide, we saw with Munoz how much space he had out wide, and obviously there's a worry that one of Dorgu or Dalot could really benefit from those spaces out wide at wing back, especially when they've got those kind of two inside forwards that our fullbacks maybe have to track, and it means that our wingers usually have to track the wing backs that they have, and a lot of them sometimes they don't do it, or they struggle doing it, and means our wingers might be pinned back, and that could be a real tactical advantage Man United have. If you kind of match them up, it kind of takes away that tactical advantage they have with the wing backs, and it means we can just match them up, and we can maybe rely on having the better individuals. But the only thing is, we've done it once, and it was a massive failure. And do you want to just revert to that in a final in such a big game, and when it's a massive risk, completely changing formation, albeit if it was something we had done more often, a bit like under Poch, where we had done it quite often. And although our best formation was with a back four, we'd kind of, in bigger games or certain games, gone to a back three, and it worked for us. You know, I would be tempted to do that, but I think it's just too much of a risk, seeing as what we've done. So I do think that, Decky being out is a blow, but the fact that in the Bodo game and maybe the Frankfurt games, we definitely have clearly gone to more of a double pivot rather than a midfield three. We've definitely played Bentancur and Bissouma next to each other with a number 10 rather than a single pivot with two kind of 10s or 8s. And I definitely think that switch will benefit us going into this game, with whoever we play in that number 10 should probably be more comfortable playing in a 10 with more freedom, with protection of Bissouma and Bentancur behind them, rather than playing in an 8 position where they'll be asked to kind of have different kind of responsibilities in that central midfield. So I think whoever we play there, whether it be Solanke, Son, Odebear, will probably find it a bit more comfortable, a bit easier to deal with changing that position, rather than if they will ask him to fit into that number 8 position. So that's a kind of positive. But as in going to the final, you know, with Bergvall, Maddison and Kulusevski, basically ripped the whole creativity out of our midfield going to his final. And especially given how, you know, United like to play back three, they like to kind of counter, they like to sit in a bit, especially in bigger games. You know, we remember them at Anfield and against Arsenal at the Emirates in the FA Cup. They actually did quite a good job sitting in and soaking up pressure and hitting. And you know, in those kind of games, what you need is really good creative players. So to not have that is a massive blow. But I think if I was to choose right now, I think I probably would drop Solanke a bit deeper. I think, because I think he'll do the running. I think you kind of don't have a fear that he's gonna kind of switch off defensively or he's gonna not do the running, not track his man. Like obviously it's a different kind of role, because when he's being up front, he's tracking centre backs, and now he's going to be doing midfielders. But if you just drill it into them and get him ready for it, he'll do it. He'll do the job, and you've got no problem that he's not going to put in the hard yards. So I think if you get him there And obviously, he's going to have times where he's further forward and a bit of a focal point, and he needs to be getting in the box. Basically, he needs to basically do what Kane does. He needs to be that kind of number 10 who like makes late runs in the box and gets on the end of things, and like is like a de facto. He's like a kind of false 9. It's like a 10, like 9.5 kind of thing. That's what we need. That's what I would do. Have maybe our Son and Richie up front and on the last line as a pure 9, or someone like Son running the last line, and has Solanke more of a 9.5 kind of thing. Maybe not a pure 10.
Yeah. Who do you want running through on goal, like from a ball from a 10? Who do you want running on the ball, like Sonny. To finish? Yeah,
Sonny. But the thing is, if you play Sonny as a lone striker, I just feel like the Man United back three will be too aggressive for Sonny to handle on his own as like a lone striker. The only way he's getting in is running in behind, and will they leave enough space in behind?
That's the thing. I think that's my point. I think when we've played Son up front, like we've kind of played with him as a lone striker in a 4-3-3 a lot of the time, and he gets kind of isolated, and that's kind of how we have play our strikers. And I think Solanke kind of can handle that because he's big and physical, but Son can't. But if you get Solanke closer to him in that kind of 9.5 role, then I think it's less of an issue if he's all kind of almost in a 2 at that point. Like I think that could be all right.
That's interesting. I mean, Shawnee, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's really unidyllic, right, for me. I just sit there, I look at Sonny and think, you know, for me, I agree with Sim that the back three model like makes sense if you were prepared for it, but we haven't been prepared for it. We haven't prepared for it at all in all honesty. And so you then would go, well, are you going to use Friday night as a chance to experiment? And if so, then you need to play some of the first team, right? But you just know that Aston Villa, who have got a lot to play for still, they're going to go in very aggressive, I think, on Friday, because they'll take advantage of the fact that Tottenham don't want to get any injuries. And so do you really want to rub up against that wall? I'm not sure you do, where you can't risk another injury. So are you going to experiment with Solanke in the 10 for the first time, or are you going to experiment with the back three for the second time? I just, at this stage, I think that the best option is just to kind of still use Friday as a nothing burger game, and not, you can't risk any more. You can't risk any more. And Aston Villa have got some really aggressive players, like John McGinn is fearsome in the tackle. Matty Cash, you know the history there. He doesn't mind flying in.
But who do we play midfield on Friday, Sean? We've got no one.
Yeah, well, I think you probably play. I mean, it's difficult, right?
Exactly, you know what I mean? You can't answer. I guess
I don't know where you go.
I guess you play Sarr because he's probably not going to start in the final. But after that, you're struggling.
Maybe play Sarr a half each for Bentancur Bissouma, and like Mikey Moore in the 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be willing to see Mikey Moore in the 10. A lot of people on Twitter are calling for Mikey Moore to play in the 10 on next Wednesday. And I've been saying this for quite a while. There's no disrespect to the guy. I do think he will be a really top player for Tottenham, but I think there is a lot of positivity bias towards his output this season because he's one of our own and he's 17. But as I've said 1,000 times, just because you're 17, if you're considered to be good enough, because then you're old enough, then you have to be compared and contrasted to everybody else, whether they're 17 or 27. And I don't think he's necessarily ready just yet, and certainly not ready for that sort of responsibility in the Europa League final. So, I do actually prefer the argument of going to that back three model, but just the absence of any kind of willingness and practice. And this again harks back to, Sim, I know you're not going to like to hear this, mate, but like this is a manager that's had 2 years to be able to spend time with adaptability. Now, I do think that in recent games in Europe, there has been some surprise performances with regards to the resolution and the kind of discipline of the setup. And even Knutson, the Bodo guy, manager, said, Tottenham surprised us, right? And I think that is a little bit of leverage that we can take advantage of, because I think we all know how Amorim's going to set his team up. But does Ruben Amorim know how Tottenham are going to set up? Because in his mind, he's going to be thinking, well, Tottenham have every right to possibly, for him to consider that Tottenham, in all likelihood, might go back to the traditional method of which we've beaten them 3 times this season. But in Europe, that's not the style of football that we've employed over the last, 3 or 4 games. So he's not going to know. And I think there's a benefit there in terms of the unpredictability of what we're going to set up as. And I think that's even enhanced by the fact that Decky's not there. If Decky was playing, then or Maddison was fit, then I think it would be more easier to at least know the 11 whether or not they play a certain way, that's the like the kind of variable. But now we don't even know. We can't even figure out amongst ourselves who the starting 11 will be, and and therefore on the same notion, who what sort of system they're going to play. I would just go back to that Sonny point though. I know that Sonny's like the guy, like the tried and tested, and when he's at his best, he's unplayable. But we haven't seen anything like Sonny's best for a long time. Even when he was fully fit this season, moments of awesomeness, but the majority of his effort has been fairly lackluster. And a guy that's, he played 20 minutes against Forest and didn't do anything. For me, to justify his involvement on Wednesday, I think he has to play 90 minutes on Friday and prove that he's fit, because if we don't have any creativity, as I said in my first answer, then it does force you down to the wings to be able to be creative and to take on that mantle and pick up the baton. And a 50% Sonny, that's not going to work, right? So you need that left side to be humming. And so I need to see 90 minutes and I need to see a ready player, because if not, then I probably lean into some other options. I personally think that Matisse Tell is far better than a lot of people give him credit for. And on the right-hand side, if you're going to stick with Brennan Johnson, then you know that you're not going to have any take on sort of attacks down there. It's going to be, go up that way and then pull it back to Pedro Porro. And again, Sim, I agree with yourself. And I think Gavin said as well that the benefit of having two big boys up in the top, I think that we're going to have to try and be as aggressive as we can from whatever opportunities we can get from corners, from set pieces, from free kicks, and from open play, bang it into the box, and then see what comes down. But yeah, in terms of like how do we go about that, and how do we treat Friday? I really don't want to see us experimenting too much with first team players, because I just know that Aston Villa are going to really be on at us from the moment from the word go, and it will just be so satisfying for them to injure one of our players.
But Sean, well, your point on Sonny, right? When you talk about going into a cup finals are heavily reliant on moments in games. And when you're looking at a player like Sonny, even if he's not at his best or, impacting things like he used to impact things throughout the course of 90 minutes, do you not believe that he's a man that can provide that moment over a player like Matisse Tell? Because when the moments come for him in games recently, he just can't seem to take them.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that at all. I would just say that, for me, the question is, does he take his moment? And are we going to be able to break Manchester United down? And, if we have 50, 60% possession, I don't expect us to, but if we did, then, as I say, like without the creative spark, I just think that left-hand side is going to be so crucial to be able to create magic and pull it back hopefully for a Brennan Johnson, back post tap in. And I just look at that, for me, if you're going to have Sonny, then I just think that you're going to need an absolutely exceptional performance from Destiny Udogie to be able to create and to get to the byline to whip it across. And so, once again, for me, whilst I think that there's massive issues at the top end of the pitch, for me, the superstars on the day have to be our fullbacks, both getting forward and getting back. Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie need to put in a worldie. And obviously, we're going to have to rely on Romero, Van der Ven, and Vicario to maintain their consistency. But I worry about Sonny. I hear your point that, if you get that moment, who do you want it to fall to in the team? Of anybody, you want it to fall to Sonny. Of course you do. But I just worry what he's going to do for the other times when it's not momentary, but over the course of the game. I'm not sure if he's going to be as commanding and as involved as we're going to need him to be.
Back on the point of potentially going to a back three, obviously when we did try Everton, it went horribly wrong. And I think a lot of people look at that game and be like, oh, we can't go to a back three again because it worked so bad. But in that game, we did have a back three of Dragoshin, Archie Gray and Ben Davis. I mean, this time it will be a lot stronger, won't it? With Mickey Van der Ven, Coutinho Romero, Kevin Danso. Does none of that suggest that potentially it could work? But it is a cup final and we haven't tried it since then.
The problem with like when you're doing say like a team sets up and they have like their major strategy, a good manager has like A, B, and that's it. And so you can shout B, and then bang, you go to it, right? So you simplify everything. We don't do that. We don't have that. We have A, and there's a mode of play that we actually, every time we do something great, it actually is that mode of play. But that mode of play for how you get the ball, bang, go, and you cut through the line, right? That mode of play relies you to kind of not hold the ball and go in and just pass around and try dominate them in their half. The mode of play that works for us is to sit and counter. Like get on the ball, bang, break through their lines, go and counter them, have us running in behind. Then we look class, and we've got a lot of good stuff happening this season from that. But we just seem to kind of play softly. Teams just drop off into their half, and then we just pepper around. And then you've got Sonny going back, because where is he going? They just push him into the corner and he passed back. So it seems like a team and a manager not understanding what strategy to use that complements, so for this game, I actually think, yeah, of course, God, if you had a team that was working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they don't work like this anymore, obviously with injuries, that this loses this option, with injuries. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you do back three, or Thursday, you do the rest of the week, you do back four. And the difficulty is, and before the Everton game, like every coach or every player, like when you go and you try a system and it works amazingly in training, because no one is pressuring you like a game. Nothing that happens in the game, no game at like kind of moments happen in training, you know what I mean? So like you can have it flow and you're like, oh God, yeah, Danzo looks great in this back three. And then you go to the game and it's like, why is he running over there? Like, because in the moment he's like, oh, I better go chase this. Bang, dead. So like it just, they look drilled for a back four, and if they have their main back four, they look like a really good team. So he's got that back four. He's not going to move away from it. I would be mind blown if he did. I would think, well, look, you don't have the midfielders. God forbid another injury happens. I feel like you're almost pushed to do it, because you need your wing backs going into the mid. You need work in the midfield. But I just think you do not, I would always say, you don't get form by using whatever way around. Now we're using, normally it'd be Europe, but now we're using the Prem as the kind of dummy games, right? And now you've got a final coming up. People always go, don't risk this player, but you don't get form that way. You don't get form by not playing. If you're coming up to game week and you're going, oh, I'm not playing, even though as a footballer you're going, I'm being rested because the final's the next week, you're going, I want to play. Your body gets geared up to play. And if you don't hit the pitch, even for 25, 30, 40 minutes, you lose something. And do you want to lose that from players? So that's one thing. But then as a fan perspective, I'm going, if you get one more injury here, we are done. So I do kind of want them just to put the kids out and throw this game. But like it's hard to. That as a Premier League game, you're talking about just don't do anything in, so you've got a strong team. But right now, I don't care about the Premier League games. I didn't watch the last game. I won't watch this. I do not care. They mean nothing at the moment. Everything is on this final. So protect, train hard, try get a simulation game happening. You can do that. You can get teams in and say, no slide tackle or whatever, but press, you can get simulation goals in training. Try do that to try things. Don't do it against Aston Villa, who are out for blood, who are just trying to mess with you. They're just going to try injure players, So I say don't do it. I say play the back four, maybe keep Sonny, but play the way that gets Sonny to cross the ball, get to the byline, cut back. When Sonny's done that this season, he's looked amazing. But when you play him in this way where you dominate the ball in their half and you pass around and you try to be Pep, well, then you don't need a Grealish and you don't need a Sonny. You don't need those players if you're going to play that boring football. Sit back, let them have the ball for a bit, get on the ball, bang through the lanes. That's how you win football games. So I think he does that, we win.
What kind of team do you want to see this weekend, Friday night?
Yeah, I think... Well, considering how many players you rested for the last game against Palace...
I did say we're going to see maybe a few more on Friday night.
Yeah, and I'm conflicted. I think I understand the need, before the cup final, considering they didn't play at all on the weekend, like just to get a few minutes in some of these guys' legs before the final, just so they're a bit fresh. But, if we play Romero and Van den Velde minutes and they get injured, then we're absolutely stuffed. We need that combination together. Again, same with Porro and Udogie. I think they've been working so well in the Europa League. If either of them picks up any sort of injury, then we're in trouble. But I also I understand with Brains, like, you know, you can't just not play them at all for 10 days and expect them to, you know, come out in the final all guns blazing, firing at the time. I mean, maybe you should. I don't know. It's tough. Maybe, to be fair, in the games in the Europa, we've rested players and they've turned up in the Europa, and we haven't needed to kind of a lot of the time keep them ticking over. We have just rested a lot of players, and in the Europa they've turned up and they've been very, very good. So I think when it comes to like Romero, Van de Ven, I don't think you can risk them. But when it comes to someone like Sonny, I think he needs to play. He needs to be in that rhythm. I think Romero and Van de Ven know what they're doing by now. I don't think they need the game time to be fresh. I think they know I think they know their partnership. They've played together enough times now. I don't think they need any more minutes together to know how to play in that final. But I think people like Sonny, I think, needs to play. Maybe Richarlison. I think probably Tel and Odegaard, in case they get their opportunities in the final, they need to play. The big problem is in midfield. Maybe we experiment with someone like Odegaard in the 10, or Tel in the 10, or Son in the 10, just so in case we need to do that in the final. We'll play one of those experiments. I think you're probably right. You play Sarr. I think you probably play a half of Bentancur or Basuma, and then you probably experiment in the 10 with someone, one of the other players, whoever that be. Maybe even if it's Solanke for a bit, you put him in there just to see how he would do for.
Archie Gray's going to play in the mid with Papa Sarr on Friday. Like, it has to, absolutely.
Unless he plays at fullback. Because Porro played on the weekend, right? I can't see Porro playing on Friday night. Does Destiny come back in? Spence will play one of the wings, one of the fullbacks.
Yeah, but Porro's been so like robust. It's like his body just has the memory in it to not get injuries. Touch wood, but like, I mean, he's pretty robust. And
he is, but he has been rotated heavily in the Premier League games. No, didn't play against West Ham, didn't play against Liverpool, played the game before against Nottingham Forest. So it's kind of like one game on, one game off for Porro. And seeing as he played last week, I can't see him playing Friday.
Yeah, can't play Porro on Friday.
No,
can't. He's too important. If you're going to go on Wednesday, and you're going to start with Richarlison and Solanke, then
Porro's our most important player.
Porro's the most important player.
Yeah, well, you got Spence on the right and Reguilon on the left. I mean, Reguilon is getting paid. He's employed at this club.
Yeah, I agree with that.
As is Timo Werner, right? Let's make it. We all forgot about Timo. You know, like there's does he even turn up to train? I haven't seen him in a training video for like the last 3 months. Is he just at home picking up 180 grand a week? Is that what's going on now?
This guy has the best life in the world. He's picking up 165 grand a week for doing.
He gives me absolutely
no. That's all he's doing. He's getting the boost gums. That's all he does. Jesus,
it's outrageous. It's outrageous.
Yeah, so
stick him in on Friday.
You got Reguilon, Spence, and then you got Archie, Pape, and then Tel or whoever plays the 10. Here you go. Just try that.
Would you suggest like giving 45 minutes to Son and 45 minutes to Solanke in the 10 against Villa, and just do a bit of a try and test?
I just don't want. I think Solanke's a key player. I'd be really worried about him getting anything. You know, he's had a couple injuries this season.
Even recently, he came for the what game was it? He came back for Solanke. He had a quad injury, and then it was a Bodo game. He came back for the Bodo game, and obviously he scored, but he missed the game on the weekend through a niggle, or he went off early, didn't he? Yeah. So it's not even that long ago. He's had a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Solanke's literally never had injury problems. As soon as he comes to Spurs, it's literally non-stop. Go on, Sean. What are you about to say?
Well, can we just contemplate for a minute how Manchester United are going to shape up, because they're missing a few key players as well, right? They've got no De Ligt, no Euro. I
mean, they didn't train. I don't know if they're going to be fit in time or not.
And are they also? Am I right in thinking they're also without Rasmus Højlund and the other guy who came from?
I think Xerxes out. Xerxes out. I don't know about Højlund. I think Højlund played last game, so I think he should be all right, didn't he?
I mean, I think
Højlund started. Yeah.
So on that basis, then, like, is it who's the little fellow who plays at centre back?
Martinez.
So
he's out as well.
He's out.
Yeah.
So the back three, if you want to assume these guys are out, the back three will be Maguire, Mazraoui, and Shaw. You would assume.
And then Dalot and
Dorgu.
and Dorgu. And then in
probably
midfield,
Casemiro, Ugarte in midfield with probably Bruno, Højlund, and Diallo maybe.
Yeah. So like not terrifying. If you nullify Fernandes, you nullify Man United, and Dorgu might be a threat, right? But do you give them the ball? Do they want to give us the ball? Like it could be the most dead rubberiest of dead rubber games.
It's going to be hot potato, mate. Everyone's going to be giving each other the ball.
Absolute stink fest of all stink fests. You know,
I think they're a defense that you want to press because
that's the thing. I agree.
They make mistakes every game. They're so nervy on the ball. I think you cut the angles and you press them, and they're going to go back to Onana, and then you've got a chance. You know.
The thing is with United, like you could do all the research you want. You know, they've been so bad the last couple of years, but they turn up in these games. They turn up in these moments.
You don't know
what
you're going to get.
Finals. Like you look at last summer in the FA Cup final, nobody gave them a chance in hell against Manchester City, and they went there, played a brilliant game, and won the game and lifted the trophy. The year before, they won the Carabao Cup. You know, these are the moments that they live for, and that's the thing I'm worried about. I got no problem to think that Spurs are the better team right now, even though the league table doesn't really suggest it. 17th going against 16th. I mean, not much in it. But I do believe we're the better team. I do believe we have the better quality. But they know how to get over the line in these kind of games, and that's what worries me.
Do you guys think Amorim is playing mind games with some of the phone's going off.
Hello? I'm just on We Are Tottenham TV.
No, I'm on a stream.
Do you think with some of the stuff Amorim's saying, he's playing mind games at the moment, or do you think he's just being totally honest and upfront with how he's feeling, with saying this Europa League doesn't matter, whatever happens, win or lose in this Europa League? Is like, he's saying there's bigger problems, and it doesn't make a difference if we win or lose this Europa League. Obviously, Andrew's singing a different tune about, and I think it's right because it's a different scenario. But do you think Amorim, what he's saying in the lead up to his final, is he playing mind games, or do you think he's just a manager who's at the end of his tether a bit?
I think he's been doing that since he got there, though. So if it's mind games, he's been doing it for a long time. He's been saying these kind of things. I think he does say these things to kind of like it's like a tactic against the press. It's like, look, I'm going to take away I'm going to give you a headline just so that everyone knows that I'm doing that. But I also think there is just like, he's trying to kind of like reserve his credibility as well. But he's also saying kind of truthful stuff as well. So it's just like, if he's got that brand of like, I just call it how I see it, it is what it is. I don't take from anything he said that he's going, I hope they take us lightly, or that we should take them lightly. We know that's Man United. Like when you've got all this history of glory and you're standing in a changing room to come out for one game, all you have to do is show them a show reel of every time they've won trophies, and they can start to feel that when you're with a group of guys going, come on, you know what I mean? But when you're Spurs and you're going, every time we've ever got close to anything, we'd lose it for the last, you know what I mean? It's very hard.
Yeah, but this team hasn't lost, mate. This team hasn't lost in a final, right? And this team has beaten Manchester United 3 times. I'm sitting there. I'm just not having it, mate. I understand the reasons why Tottenham fans feel like
that's where I was going,
or whatever. But I'm just like, nah. Like, come on, Tottenham.
No,
the players, the boys, Ange need to. I hear what you're saying.
That's exactly where I was going.
Something,
But the history of the club seeps in, though. That's the problem. The history of the club does seep in. We've been in the last 4 finals. We haven't scored a goal. Better teams than this have been in finals and not got over the line. You know what I mean? So, and Manchester United, you're talking about the worst.
This is where Ange comes in. This is where Ange comes in, because he is that guy with a big speech for a big moment. Yeah, and like they've all said, he does get them pumped. Like, so this is where he comes in to go like, you can flip history. You can flip bad history. You can show them what Tottenham were in a VT, and you can be like, look at all these people who feel that we can't win, who are cursed by history. You can change that. Like, you today, one moment, you can change that, and then you can like get them all going. Like, let's fucking go. Like that's he's the guy that can do that with his speeches. That, if anything, that's his big kind of charm, you know? Like, so I'm hoping that's kind of what happens, really.
Sean, what do you think of the battle of the rhetoric between Ange and Amorim? What they're, both of them, what they've been saying in the lead up to the final about what it means to each club. Like, what do you feel? How much of an impact do you think that will make come next week?
If I'm entirely honest, I'm not a massive fan of either of it. I don't really like the Amorim approach of like, yeah, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. Nothing changes the league thing, because like that's like almost like paying lip service to what is actually a massive opportunity for both clubs, and his reputation is on the line. Like, let's be honest. I know he hasn't had as long as Ange has had, but he's had long enough to have delivered more than what he's done. So to sit there and sort of like make out like the league is the bread and butter, and this is all just a kind of by the by, I think that's a little bit disrespectful to the magnitude of the moment, and also how much it really does mean for him, because there's a lot of noise out right now that if he loses that, then Mourinho might come back in for a late swan song. As far as Ange goes, I echo what Gavin's saying there about, say what you want about Ange, but he does have the words. He is a wordsmith, so you can imagine him going to invoke something, and you need to rely on that. And also, I think that it's worth pointing out that if these group of players do this and win it, then they will do what all of the legends in the last 20, 30 years, whatever, most of them never achieved, right? Like Harry Kane never did this. Ledley King never did this, right? Jurgen Klinsmann never did this. All the guys, Luka Modric never did this as a Tottenham player. And so there is a moment here for these guys to etch their names in glory, and to really put that, put the history to bed and become something that, to say, some absolute superstars that have adorned that white shirt and a lot of their numbers haven't had a chance to do. And I trust Ange to find the right words in the right order to get that done. As far as like Ange's kind of press relationship of late, I'm not really impressed with the way that I think I said this on a tweet before. I said that like back in the early 2000s, Mourinho created some sort of like us versus them, us against the world narrative. But the us included the fans, the players, everybody in the club. It was the world was everybody else. And I felt like at times this season, from what I've heard from him, from his reactions to fans in the stadium, from the way that he reacts to the press, and even comments from James Maddison and Vicario, Decky, there's a little bit of like that same us versus the world mentality. But at times I feel like the us thing is just them, the players and the manager, and it doesn't really include everybody else. And I think at times I felt like the fans are part of the world side on that, and it annoys me. It also really annoys me when I hear him, again, like putting into the context of where we're at. I can get it to a degree, but I felt like at times he has spoken out of both sides of his mouth. When he says one thing, he's also opening him up to criticism about something else. Like when he said, the injuries aren't my fault, we don't train anymore. Shortly after, we put that back three into place against Everton, and we changed the system against Liverpool in the cup and all those things. I'm like, well, if you're not training, then why are we experimenting in real time? That you're opening yourself up to criticism if people are paying attention and inferring, from what you're saying. And then what I feel like there's a lot of excuses and justifications for mistakes. He took credit for Jed Spence when that was just embarrassing, right? He said, like, he created the best analogy I've ever heard from someone that's run out of excuses by using that stonecutter analogy, because for that's basically like an indefinite stay of leave, by saying that I could be here for 5 years still losing every game, and if you sack me, then we just weren't at the 101st blow yet. So like, it's a brilliant identification of a never-ending reprieve from criticism in his own mind. But then when you hear that he's kind of run out of excuses the other day after the Palace defeat, and the interviewer said, like, come on, 20 defeats now in one season is really bad. What are you going to say? And then he ran out of excuses. So now he just scoffed and laughed it off and said, like, if you can't see that what we're doing here, there's a massive difference between the league and the cup, then I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, go and write your headline. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say those words for word, but like, that's the kind of gist. And I'm sort of thinking, well, okay, well, if I'm taking you on your word here, and I probably shouldn't, because you'll change your tune at some point next week or whatever. But what you're really saying then is that if in the future, if you're still the manager and we go deep in any competition, then we can't expect anything other than a loss from our league performances, because you don't have the ability to fight on multiple fronts. And that's terrifying. Also, what you're saying is that you don't have any faith in the rotation of your squad a squad that you have built, right? Because he has gone through 25 or whatever it is player transitions over the last 18, 19 months. So again, I'm not a fan of his. Like I've seen through it. I used to fall in love with the words. Now I see through it and see what it really is. It's a transparent and very obvious ability that he's harnessed very well as a salesman to be able to distance himself from accountability. So to answer your question, I don't really vibe with either of the approaches of either manager. I'd rather there was someone that just was honest and said it how it is and say, look, this is really important for multiple reasons. Obviously, it's the biggest deal, but yeah, you're right. The league isn't in any way acceptable. The performances, I can't really.
He has said that. He has said that.
Yeah, but he's like, I've been a manager in like lots of big businesses. I've had salespeople before under my remit who are very like open and honest, but they're not. What they do, they're telling you what you want to hear, but then nothing changes. It's
yeah, but he's not going to come out and say I'm a bad manager. He's obviously going to try and give reasons why things have happened.
Yeah, but he's run out of reasons, and now he's just saying, if you just go and write your headlines. I don't care. Like, well, the fans care, right? I was at that game. You were at that game, Ben, on Sunday. Jack from Irish Hotspur and his mum travelled over from Seattle. I bumped into like 10 Koreans who'd flown over for the day. And then to put that on, to have that effort, it's unacceptable, it's dismissive, and it's disrespectful to the people that don't have the luxury of earning millions of pounds a year and can treat all that stuff as a sunk cost. To a lot of people, that sort of effort when you're saving up to be able to, especially those that travel from, not especially, because I don't care if you live in Barnet or you live in like Timbuktu, it doesn't matter. If you're contributing to the club, there's a level of expectation, and I think the manager owes the fans a little bit more than dismissive and cynical, like almost bordering on narcissistic, like indignancy to the press, right? We only get a few minutes a week to hear his thoughts, and the way he dismissed that, to me, is unacceptable.
Look, Sean, I do agree with you for the most part, but I mean, when you're sitting here a week away from the Europa League final, like kind of all this stuff don't really matter right now. All it matters is if he gets the team right for the final, if we want it more than Manchester United, which I think we will do, if definitely when you're looking at the two players coming into it. And then after the final, we can have these conversations. Is Ange the right man for us? But right now, I think it's just so important that, we just show Ange the most amount of support that we can do. And, all these kind of games, we've been suffering all season, seeing this Premier League form like getting worse and worse and worse progressively throughout the season. But none of it's going to matter, right? None of it's going to matter if we're sitting there in Bilbao Wednesday night celebrating that trophy.
100%. If we are, then great. If we're not, then, as I've said before, right, there's a massive difference between being the best manager Spurs have ever had or in the last 40 years and the most successful. You can be the most successful and be far away, like very far from the best. And I think he will go down as the worst manager we've ever had, but possibly also the most successful in the last two generations. And that to me is fine. I'm happy to park everything and celebrate, and I'll sing his name one last time on Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday after the game at Brighton at home. And I hope that we can part company as a successful endeavour. But what I've seen from him, and I hear what you're saying, none of it does matter, but you still have to act like you care, act like it's important. And as I say, it's only words. It doesn't take much effort to act like you give a shit. And he doesn't see, of late, it looks like he's a man who's run out of rope, and he's now moved away from, I've got an excuse for this or I've got a justification for that, to now it's just, you know what, do what you want, write what you want, us versus the world. And that world includes the fans, and that's problematic for me.
Before we carry on, we'll go on for a bit longer, but Brains has got to go because he's got to jump off. But big up, Brains. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers, Brains.
Yeah, I just want to say about Ange is that if I was him, he had a massive opportunity in these last few weeks, especially getting to the final, to kind of to basically say, I was brought in to do this, to do a job, get a trophy at this club. Mm-hmm. And obviously he can't come out and say, well, it looks like the Prem isn't going to be it, so forget that, and we're just going to not focus, just use that as kind of the bad tournament and try win the other. But that is what we all know, that's what the situation's become. right? And so, but now he's here. Now he's managed some really difficult games, showing that he's got this versatility to play different styles and see out hard games. Now he's in the final. He could, and he probably should in some ways be sitting there going, just have patience. This is what I was paid to do. This is why I'm here. I'm trying to change things. I need your support, and have that kind of conversation with the press and the fans. Like, look, you guys don't know everything. I can't tell you everything. We've got strategy, but just support us and we'll come good. And then when we got here, I think we'd all still be singing the names. But it's the jibs with the fans. It's the lifting the hand. It's the way that his kind of competitive Aussie spirit of like, I'm it. Like, you don't know, I'm the man. You know. So like, it's that personal internal stuff that is the tripping up. And maybe he isn't saying what I just said he should say because it isn't true. Maybe he didn't have those conversations. Maybe he wasn't brought in just to win a trophy. Maybe Levy gives him this whole thing and it isn't just that. And that's just us projecting because that's what we want, you know? So I think there's ways that he could have done it. He's clearly not well. He's not press trained. He's not really, you know, his whole career's been this.
I thought you were just finishing it. He's clearly not well.
Yeah, I mean, his whole career has kind of been like weird arguments with press, and then amazing relationships with that same press corps when he's the winner. Like he goes through this, like arguments back and forth, like that one in Scotland initially when he was arguing with a guy about they didn't know who he was, and you know, and then next thing you know, they're sitting down and they're doing one-to-one conversations with him being this legendary manager. That's kind of what he does. But I would have thought like, well, so you know this happens. So why are you surprised when people are like judging and going, who's this guy? You know, like, you know this process. You've done it before. You've been in a team and they struggle in the first season or whatever, and then you come good. Like, why are you not confident in that? Why are you not behaving that way to the press going, I promise you it'll come good. We've got loads of problems. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to blame them, but I promise you it'll come good. Just stick by us. And I think if fans heard that message, we'd have been like, all right. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Lovely seeing you guys again. I just got to run off, but I'll speak to you all soon, and hopefully we play absolutely a nothingness team and throw another game on Friday, so that we don't.
Brains, just before you go, Paul O'Keefe has just said that Kulusevski is having pain-killing injections in his knee. Still a major doubt for the game, but he's not 100% ruled out yet.
Have you ever, Brains, as someone who's got a history of injuries, have you ever done that? A pain-killing injection in your knee?
Yeah, and it's not a good thing. Obviously, pain shuts down parts of the muscle. So if you feel a pain somewhere, it's a signifier saying stop. You know, so pain shuts down muscles, and yeah, he shouldn't do it. Like it's for years, like epidural, you get the like pain steroids in your back. Small relief, doesn't solve anything. Spent most of his career with shots in for his sciatic nerve problem. Didn't make anything better. So yeah, inject him up and we'll throw him out there. Why not?
Big up, Brains. Thanks for coming on today, mate.
You guys soon. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers, Brains. In terms of what you were saying, Shawnee, about the problems you have with what Ange says and all this kind of stuff. What he said was, I think after Palace, he said, if it's fair to say if we weren't in the Europa League final or in the Carabao Cup final, then the league results would have been different. Like, is that not just him basically, with all the problems that we've had this season, injuries and all this kind of stuff, and then managing these players on their return, because they've been, a lot of them have obviously been out for a long time, 3-4 months. And you've seen with Romero van der Ven, he's been managing them up until this point where now they're obviously playing 90 minutes in Europa League games. But before that, they were playing 60 minutes and whatever. He was easing them in 45 minutes, 60 minutes, like in Premier League games and Europa League games before. Now they're in a phase where they can play. Like, is he not just implying like, he's had to manage this situation, right, up until the point where these players are now fully fit. And in that time, he's had to make, obviously, tough calls because we're in this Europa League run. And obviously, he's prioritised this Europa League run because that's obviously I think we can all agree that's obviously the best way we're going to get a trophy back in Europe, and the only way really right now. And isn't he saying if I was managing this situation without this Europa League run, then we would have much better results in the Premier League, because right now in the Premier League, that's kind of not the most important thing. Well, not the most important thing, but it's not the kind of that's like.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just think that there's obviously like he's invoking some ulterior timeline of reality where like, oh, just trust me, it would all have been great had we not had this distraction. We don't know that. And if anything, you can park your minds back to.
He didn't say it would have been great, but maybe he's saying we wouldn't be on 20 losses with the record, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'd hope not. Like, I'd hope not, right? Because it's the worst in our Premier League history. It's the worst since '91. And the team is nowhere near as bad as the teams that we had in the '90s or the early noughties, right? Nowhere near as bad. I think he's like I say, I think he's invoking like hypothetical timelines that we'll never know the difference, and just asking us to buy into that. And if you're gonna like just look back at last season, when the first 10 games really did paper over a horrendous last 28 games of the season, where he also promised us just wait until we get our first team back, and we didn't have any cup distractions in the second half of last season. It was the fewest games in Tottenham's Premier League career, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was.
And we still were absolutely shambolic at times, getting beaten by teams that are nowhere near as good as us on paper, that are just better organised. And he found the excuses back then. I hear what you're saying, mate. Like, of course it's not black and white. Of course it's not black and white. Nothing ever is. There's always a shade of grey. There's always context and considerations. And I absolutely empathise and sympathise with the plight of which he's had to endure with injuries. Not just this season, but last season as well. It was bad. But, every team does have injuries, and every other team finds ways to figure out a method to get it done. At the same time, I'd also say that for most teams, when they go from a period of playing no European football to then having to deal with European football, even Newcastle United struggled at their first attempt of doing that. So did Aston Villa 2 seasons ago. But those teams have matured to the point where they can now handle it and sort of be a threat on multiple fronts. Tottenham have the added complexity of also going deep in the Carabao Cup. So I'm not going to sit here and dismiss it as an irrelevant factor. I'm just saying that the argument that he's making, he's run out of legitimate excuses, and now he's having to ask people to imagine a timeline and trust him that it would have been different, when the only evidence we have of that was last season, and it didn't work out any different.
But if he's saying people point to in December, he was, when we weren't doing very well, we were losing lots of games, and he was saying, once we get our players back, it's going to be a different situation, and we'll be better. And then they're saying now, well, look at the league form since we got our players back, and it hasn't improved. But we're in a European final. Is that not signs of improvement since the players came back? Would that not be evidence of the team improving, given the fact we're in a European final?
Well, let me ask you this, right? Again, I'm not undermining it at all, because you can't help you play. You can't help who you play. You can't help the draw. You can't help the fact that the rules were changed to limit the amount of drop downs of quality from the Champions League. But would you look at who we've played, and would you expect Bournemouth to have got past those same teams? Would you expect Crystal Palace to have got past those same teams?
Would you expect Lazio?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't watch Serie A enough, so I'm not.
Right, but would you say Lazio are better than the teams you're mentioning? They're currently joint fourth in Serie A. They're not a bad team. That is a case to say they're better than those teams you're mentioning potentially.
Yeah, again, I'm not someone that I was never someone that said that Bodo. A lot of people in the Tottenham community before the Bodo game were saying they're no mugs. This game isn't over. We're 3-1 up. We've got to go to their place. They've done damage on some massive teams, and then as soon as we beat them, there was a lot of goalposts moving, saying, "Well, it's only Bodo." I wasn't part of that crew, right? I said, "No, it's credit to the boys. We were organised, and we surprised Knutson." And he articulated as much. So I'm not taking anything away from the European performances. I think they've been resolute, they've been disciplined, they've been organised. But if we can do that in the Europa League, why can't we do it in the Premier League? And that, to me, there's a question mark around why it is that we go and do that disciplined effort in the Europa League, and then we turn up against Palace or West Ham or whatever else, and either don't care, or we park ourselves back into this kind of, archaic version of Ange ball that's somewhat adapted, and certainly adapted in the Europa League, but hasn't done so much in the Premier League. And then the outcomes are the same as they have been for the most part of the last 18 months. And to me,
fair, but if you did like a combined 11 between the team we played on Sunday and Palace, you probably take more Palace players.
Well, that's just talking out of the Henry Wright school of thought, mate. Henry Wright thinks that he would take
for the team on Sunday that we started. I'm saying,
yeah,
you do a combined 11 with the Palace team.
Yeah, but I also maybe on that basis, but you know, I would also say that we were completely outclassed on. Like, we didn't have a sniff, and they could have won that game 6-0 on a different day. So it wasn't even a competition. And I don't think the gap. I'm not someone who thinks that this squad is as bad. A lot of people suggesting that this squad is horrendous. I think that over the last 2 years, from the Conte model, our first 11 was here and our squad was here. I think what's happened is it's more like that now. I think that our first 11 isn't quite as good with the absences of notable players like Harry Kane, etc. But the depth in the squad has closed the gap. And I don't look at the team on Sunday and think that the Crystal Palace's starting 11 should walk past us at home like it was a training ground routine. And that's what it felt like. West Ham and Tottenham used to be a good derby match. On the week before, it was like one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. And I think you can make that same argument for many appearances. Many of the efforts that were put on display by this system, of which, like I said in the previous answer earlier, it's not like Ange has inherited this squad. Like, this squad is largely his now, right? For the most part, it's largely his. So he's created a team, and when he says things that you could infer to mean, like, when we go deep in a European competition, don't expect anything else other than a loss from a team that over the last 10 years have been, relegation fodder, or a slowly developing team under, previous incarnations under Roy Hodgson or whatever, but now under Oliver Glasner, they're doing bits. Like, I don't accept that that's a realistic outcome that we should come to be okay with as Tottenham Hotspur fans. It's an unacceptable level of accepting of horrendous performances by a team that he's put together in the name of, we've got bigger fish to fry. Like, that's not what football's about. And I think that if he's literally saying that, and I'm taking him on his word, then I really worry about the idea that if we do win the league, the Europa League, and he's given a stay of execution, then nothing will change next season. And if we were to dare to go deep or have any ambitions in any of the cups that we're in next year, then again the league would be a kind of afterthought, and that to me is not acceptable because it's your bread and butter. I've always said that that your league is the best barometer of where you are relative to your week in, week out competition, and this season's proven to be a stark awakening of that reality.
I guess if I was Ange, which a lot of people accuse me of being, what I'd argue is, obviously there's clearly been a lot of missteps and mistakes made when it comes to how they've been handling the injury and playing attrition this season. And look, Andrew's admitted that himself, this season, whether he said he went too hard at the beginning of the season or whatever it is, there's been a lot of mistakes and a lot of blame to be had in terms of, all these players, why they were getting injured, and that's had a big part to play in how the season's been derailed. And I think since the players come back, he's managing them in a different way, I think it's fair to say. And I correct me if I'm wrong, I think since the players have come back in, February, March time, I don't think of too many muscle injuries that we've had off the top of my head. We've had a few. Madison got a knee injury. Bergval's got an ankle injury. Decky, I think, has just picked up a knee injury. But I don't think of too many muscle injuries that can be put down to, the way we play or whatever people put it down to beforehand, because we were running too much or whatever, we're going too hard. So if he's learning from those mistakes and we're managing the squad better, right, from that point of view, we get our place in that Europa League. And the next season, the squad will be in a much better position to handle both competitions, maybe with some improvements to the squad and lessons learned from what we went through this season to handle more than one competition, compared to right now in the state of the squad with all the injuries that we've had throughout the season, and for long-term injuries as well. Right now, he's kind of had to kind of pick and choose how he plays his best team, rather than being able to play a more consistent 11s more often, or even maybe just make 1 or 2 changes rather than 8 or 9, which he's basically had to do to keep these players, manage these players through the whole season, this part of the season that he's had to do. And with the instilled belief, first of all, in the squad having won a competition and lessons learned from the injury crisis that we have gone through, then would be in a different position next season.
Yeah, but again, a lot of that is
one win. There's been
you're hanging your hat on
time.
lessons learned, mate. I don't know. Like, I think that's a massive. It's been 2 years. Right? I remember 18 months. No, sorry, maybe 5 months ago. We were losing. I think we lost to Ipswich. I think it was right. And he came out and said, "I don't want to focus on the game and the defeat in isolation. What's happening right now is far more important."
Lessons learned from injuries. That's what I was saying.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, injuries are always going to be a factor.
Not that many.
Well, I mean, Arsenal have had more injuries than Tottenham this year. Newcastle had more injuries last year. I think Bournemouth have had a lot of injuries as well. I just think it's always, yeah. Like, again, I said it in the previous answer. Like, I'm not in any way undermining that variable. I think it's real and relevant. I just don't think that he hasn't shown to me anywhere near enough gumption to think that things are going to manifest into different realities next season. And I was of the mindset that I'm okay on a meritocracy basis. I'd rather the club didn't. I'd rather the club find a way to part companies in a world where we win. If he loses the final, he has to go. But if we win, then I think it's an open-ended debate, or whatever. And I've always said I'm okay on a meritocracy basis if the club were to make that decision. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've very much hard-lined move towards the even on a meritocracy basis, just the way that he conducts himself, the way that he excuses himself, and the way that the team in interviews and him, and the kind of the approach that's been on offer, and the insights that we can garner. I'm just not on board it anymore. I don't think that he's the right guy for this level of expectation. He might do a good job at a team that doesn't have to play twice a week, but for teams that do, you need managers that can find the time to do more than just rinse and repeat one version of football. And and I don't think he does. I think he hasn't got a plan B of his own version, let alone does he have time or seemingly any interest in really doing SWOT analysis of the opportunities and threats of other teams.
But is the recent Europa League games not evidence of that?
No, I don't think that. I don't think we have. Well, there's been an adaptation of the way we structure our own football, but I haven't ever seen any setup where we're looking to take advantages of the vulnerabilities of the other teams. And I think that other team managers have adaptability to pivot in game or over a period of games towards different.
We did do that against Bodo in the second leg. We did do that against Bodo. We completely, went into a game with the idea to nullify what they're strong at. That's what we did.
I just felt like we went there to hang on. I don't feel like we necessarily curtailed their threats. I mean, for what it's worth, I didn't think that they demonstrated any threats as well. I thought that they were really poor over the 2 games. And again, you can make the argument that we made them look poor, then that's a reasonable one to make. But I'm just, from what I've witnessed, and it's just my take, I just don't think that there's enough attention paid to the strengths of other teams and how do you curtail them. I think against Frankfurt, people make the argument that was what happened with Romero against Ekitike, and I think that there's some merit to it. But also, don't forget that who was the 10 who went off injured? It wasn't close. It was what's his name?
For who?
For Frankfurt in the away leg.
Götze,
yeah, Mario Götze, yeah. So I think that he was an absolute massive hit for them. When he went off injured, that changed the game fundamentally, and that sort of thing was luck. That wasn't by design, obviously. So I think he stays on the pitch. It's maybe a different outcome. Like I say, I'm not as blinded by the Ange outlights as others, but I don't want him at the club next season.
What was the point you made before? If he won the Europa League, he'd be the worst manager. What did you say? The worst manager to win it?
I think that there's a difference between being the best manager of all time or in the last couple of 40 years and the most successful. A lot of people are confusing that and saying, well, if he wins the league, he's the best manager at Tottenham for 40 years. Well, no, that's not the case. He might be the most successful, but he isn't the best. Clearly, he isn't the best. But you could make the argument that he's the worst based on the league form because there's never been a system.
Well, if you take both at the end of the season, if we have won that Europa League, and then you take both seasons as an overview, finishing 5th in your first and winning a major European trophy in the second, has any Tottenham manager done better than that in their first 2 seasons?
Done better or been more successful?
Done better than that. 5th and a major European trophy in your first 2 seasons.
You're taking out the bad things as well.
You're
leaving out 17th.
But this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about 17th in there as well. Then.
Okay, and 17th.
So he's got a net average of about 10th in the league.
And a European trophy.
So he's
a major. But we would also have a major. You would also have a major European trophy.
But his points per game or whatever is the lowest in Tottenham's history, right? And over the 2 years, and that I think, like I say, for me, I've never been someone that says top four isn't a trophy, even though it isn't a trophy. I said it in the previous answer. I think that the barometer of where you are as a football club is how you do in the league, and I think that if you're a fan of a football club, then in a season where you finish fourth and you might only get to the fifth or sixth round or whatever of a couple of cups, you're still going to be leaving your environment, having watched Tottenham play on a Saturday or a Wednesday or whatever, happy 75% of the time. This season, it almost feels like if we win it, there should be an asterisk on the cup, because it's been a really horrendous season to endure for Tottenham fans for 75% of the games that we've had to watch. So
you think the clamour for trophies at this club has been overstated due to
I've always said, like, I think that trophies are, when people say what's the point of elite sports, it's trophies. I see what you're doing here, Sim. You're trying to turn the attention onto me rather than letting it be about you and your love of Ange. I hear you. And you're doing a good job.
Sean, don't worry. He does this to everyone.
Well, I've always said that whilst, like, to answer the question, what's the point of elite sports? Yeah, for sports players, it's to win a trophy, right? But you are not not an entirely irrelevant, but you are, for the most part, an irrelevant observer of other people's success or failure. You're just a participant in the support of it, and so you don't get a hand on the trophy. It doesn't go in your cabinet. And for me, I like to look at Tottenham. I like to watch football as a distraction from the stresses of your normal life, right? And so I'll tolerate this season once to get the monkey off our back for our trophy drought. But if I had to repeat this every season, it's not for me. Not for me.
No, I agree with that, but if I offered you fifth place right now, but we're out of that Europa League final, would you take it?
For this season, no, I wouldn't, but based on where we were. But at the start of the season, if you said to me fifth place and Champions League qualification, or 17th place and a trophy, I said I'll tolerate it once. But if you're going to offer it to me for 2 years running, 3 years running, no, because it's been horrendous. The season's been horrendous.
Maybe this is a one-off then, though.
Yeah, but it won't be a one-off with Ange.
Maybe it will.
There's no chance Ange Postecoglou gets this team back into the top four next year. No chance. By merit in the Premier League. No, in my opinion, no chance. And therefore, that's why I land on regardless of the outcome, I would like to move on.
Well, I think it's absolutely spot on though what you say about best and most successful, because you look at the most successful managers in our Premier League history: Juande Ramos, George Graham. They're nowhere near the best managers that we've had at this football club in that time, are they? Nowhere near.
Exactly.
They didn't finish fifth, though.
What's that?
They didn't finish fifth.
Who cares about finishing fifth?
So all of a sudden it doesn't matter where you finish in the league now.
It matters if it's significant. We need to be finishing the top four.
Pochettino got to
fifth for this season would be significant because it would have been Champions League football. But
this
the same
season
last
it would
season.
through the back door again. But last year,
it's the same thing. It's not our fault that the European clubs didn't do well.
But would you tolerate this next season, Sim?
No.
Would you tolerate it? Okay, so then you've answered your own. Okay, perfect. That's what I need to know. Thank you. So you're Ange out as well.
I wouldn't tolerate this next season, no.
So you're Ange out as well. You just can't bring yourself to say
it. Why does that mean I'm Ange out?
Because this is what will be. This is at best what will be replicated next year.
I disagree. I don't think it will be.
You think he's got the stones to be able to? If we win the cup, which is the only way in which he'll still be employed, you think he has the stones to be able to do better in the league, where we're back up competing for European spots, and also conduct himself on 3 other fronts?
Depending on what kind of summer we have, yeah, I do. I don't think we're going to be mired back in the relegation battle.
Okay, but when was the okay? So would you tolerate 12th in the league and a late cup run?
No, I think he can get us back challenging for Europe next season.
But you're saying that's predicated on the summer. Let me ask you this: when was the last summer transfer window that you were really happy?
I don't know, never probably.
So you genuinely believe
do you have in Tottenham getting the transfer window up?
Champions League football, where we're going to have to play our strongest team, plus a league season where we're going to have to play our strongest team. Like, how is he supposed to manage that?
How's anyone?
Well, they have much better squads than us.
No, I'm talking about any manager. I'm talking about if that's what we're still talking about next season.
Other managers don't play such high intensity football,
and we haven't recently.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe next season you won't.
Recently as well, we've won 1 game since March.
Yeah, because we're managing this squad with a lot of injuries. Next season, I don't think we're not going to play Romero and Van de Ven in the Premier League.
Well, Romero won't play at all.
Right, he won't play at all. But, yeah. But I'm just saying, we're not going to be resting. At the start of the season, it's not going to be our B team starting from the season, is it? It's going to be, we'll be playing our first 11.
It's going to be our A team playing every single game and inevitably break down.
Well, maybe not, because he's clearly said that he's learned from that, or he's
I
acknowledged
can't give
that
him the
was
benefit
wrong.
of the doubt, Sim. Like, if
maybe not, but that's what he said. So he
says a lot of things. But he says a lot of things one week, and then he changes his tune the next week.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of managers do. Like we always used to complain about Jose and Conte contradicting themselves all the time. It was always had problems with it.
But there's some massive differences between a manager that literally last season said the reason why we're not doing so well is because we're not playing enough games, and this season is because we're playing too many. Like we're
playing too many amidst an injury crisis. Yeah.
It's wildly inconsistent, and it's wildly looks like a guy whose back's against the wall who'll find any words to justify it. I personally think that if you're saying that the reason why you're still on the train is because you're harboring some hope that he's learned from his mistakes. Sorry, 2 years. You're not afforded 2 years. No one the average tenure of a Premier League manager is like 16 months, right? So he's long past that. And he's now still saying, I'm learning from my mistakes. Sorry, bro. You don't get that much rope anymore. No one does. No one would do. If it was, I don't know. I've got no idea why Daniel Levy has the track record he has of the impatience that he has shown to everybody else. And yet he gave this guy as long as he's had.
So, but Sean, if we win that trophy in Bilbao, would it be justified him staying? Like if it was him having kept him, I'm saying. No, not saying keeping him for next season, but the decision to keep him on until the end of the season, is that not justified if we win the trophy?
If trophies your like be all and end all, which it hasn't been for Daniel Levy, and let's be honest, Daniel Levy cares about money and money only more than anything, or at least more than anything else. And yet the money we're going to make from winning the trophy, it's only going to be slightly compensated for by the Champions League qualification prize money. But ultimately, we're sacrificing £32 million. There's still £12 million to play for in the Premier League in merit awards, and yet we're treating it like they're just an irrelevant like headache. Like Daniel Levy must be looking at that going.
Because for fans, I tell you why. Because as fans, we've been banging on about how Levy has been, looking to maximise profits and all these kind of things. And now we've got a cup final up for grabs, and all of a sudden people are saying, "Oh, but there's $3 million per Premier League place. Don't we want the money?" It's like, no, we want the trophy.
I'm not talking about from the fans' perspective, and Ange Postecoglou has made absolutely every demonstration that he doesn't care about the fans' perspective. So, like, he's not coming out from that perspective. Daniel Levy's never cared about the fans' perspective. He cares about the money. So my argument is more around why has Daniel Levy stood by him? And you're saying, well, it will be justified, and maybe it will. But at the same time, I would argue that if he'd made the decision to make a change earlier, not that I was calling for it, so I don't want to be considered a flip flop. I was willing to give the guy the cups, and that's why I've stood by it. But right now, I'm saying moving forward, I don't think that he's the right guy. I think I've seen enough now for my patience to have run thin with his justifications. But the argument that we wouldn't, like, had they made a decision to change manager earlier, you can't therefore assume that we wouldn't also be in the same position if there was a different manager in place right now.
I'm saying, but look at Man United change managers. Any guarantee the league form would have improved?
Yeah, and it hasn't. So yeah, I hear you on that.
You know what I mean? So I think if we do win that trophy, the decision to have given him till the end of the season would have been vindicated, in my opinion, because he won the trophy. He won that Europa League.
From a success perspective, but from the like financial perspective, which is what Daniel Levy cares about, I think that's questionable.
I mean, depending on when you're saying we should have sacked him or not, depending on what point in time you're talking about. Like if you're saying in December he should have been sacked, then
no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm not saying he should have been. I'm just saying that he could have been. There was enough uproar among the fan base. If the fan base were like beacons of information that the club actually listened to, and there was enough like intolerance of Ange back then. I wasn't part of it. I was willing to let it play out. So I don't want to be like a Johnny come lately to that train, but I'm just saying that there was enough evidence. But the fans are not listened to. The fans are not a beacon that's taken on board by the people at the club. So look, we don't know, right? We're talking about hypotheticals of what might have happened if the other decisions have been made. I'm just looking forward. We are Correct. Where we are. Mm-hmm. I really hope that he gets it. Hope he gets it right, and that we get the job done on Wednesday. But for me, regardless of what happens on Wednesday, I'd like to see another man at the helm next season.
Who would you put in? Who would you hire?
My number one choice is Xavi, because I need a guy who has a a preference to, or at least a willingness to embrace the youth. I think we've clearly gone down this youth-centric model, and I think that he's a good fit for that. Obviously, Oliver Glasner's like sort of ringing some bells, isn't he? Like making his stake for a claim for a better job right now. I don't think Iriola's going to leave anyway. Not that I'm even that fussed about him. So there's a few names. Obviously, I don't know. There's no chance in getting Inzaghi. I think he would be mad to leave Inter, but if you could do that, then that would be interesting. I'm also a fan of Terzic, right? But the only concern I have with Edin Terzic is that he has he's a bit of a control freak, and I think his history suggests that he wants to kind of have his cake and eat it. He likes to be a manager, coach, everything, and so I don't know if he would go down too well with working with Paratici and whoever else is going to be running the show. But yeah, there's a few names out there. It's certainly not as dry as it was in January, and I think there'll be more sackings to come. My number one choice would have been Pochettino, but he's not going to be ready until after the World Cup. And even then, I don't think you can do it next summer because the World Cup doesn't finish, presuming America do okay. He won't be done with that until July, and we'll already be on pre-season. So that's another kind of delayed environment for us to get our business done next summer. So I think Pochettino might have to be the guy after the guy before the guy.
Guy after the guy before the guy. I mean, obviously I like the idea. I think Xavi, it was a weird one with Xavi at Barca because he won the league. The following season didn't go too well, but then they were going to offer him a new deal, and then last minute they pulled out of the deal for one reason or another, and it didn't quite work. He did, interestingly enough, he has said his next job he wants to be in charge of a project of at least 4 years. He said. So I mean, maybe we could sell him that, but I don't know. Would he come to Tottenham? I don't know. I don't know if he would come to Tottenham. Maybe.
Is there any evidence to suggest that Xavi is actually a good manager though?
Well, he won the league at Barca. That's evidence, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Barcelona.
Yeah, but you still have to be a good manager to win La Liga, don't you?
Yeah. But, I mean, there are plenty of managers probably that have won the league with Barca or Real, and you probably wouldn't take them here.
Well, most of them are pretty good, I would say.
Good managers, but you said the other day, Ancelotti wouldn't do well here, and he's won how many Champions Leagues?
Yeah. I think he's a very specific manager, but he's different because the way he plays, I don't think would work with us. You need like the world's best, like not necessarily like Xavi. Maybe he's more implementing a system rather than Xavi is more like have unbelievable defenders and then just let the front line do what they want essentially. And we don't have a good enough front line to do that. I don't think.
Who are your? I know Sim's obviously Angie all the way. If not Ange though, Sim, if your ideal situation is stripped away from you, who would you guys like to?
Yeah, I like the idea potentially of Glasner, but I think if we do switch to a back three, it does leave a lot of uncomfortable conversations for a few players. How do we fit into a squad like that? Maddison and Decky and Johnson and Son and Tell and Odebear and all these kind of players. There might have to be some tough calls made there in the front line if we do move to a back three. As well, you probably, there's going to be some squad readjustment, which again will probably take another summer of transition, and no one wants that again. I think Motta's an interesting shout. Thiago Motta, who's obviously doing very well at Bologna, didn't do so well at Juve, but Juve's at the moment seems to be a bit of a poison chalice. It's a bit of a weird one, so maybe it's a case of a good manager at the wrong time for them. And at Bologna, he played very good football. They were a very good attacking team. But for one reason or another, for some reason, went to Juve and he went super pragmatic, and it was just a very different kind of setup. I don't know. So, but maybe he's an interesting choice.
If Juve is a poison chalice, what's Tottenham?
Yeah, 100%. I think someone like Fabregas wouldn't be a bad option.
Oh, Sim, get off the stream right now.
Wouldn't be a bad option.
Fabregas as Tottenham manager. Come
Robin Van Persie will be next up on your list, will it, mate? What are we doing?
He would be a good manager, I think.
We're not entertaining the conversation of Cesc Fabregas, surely.
That's the only problem is he's an Arsenal and Chelsea legend. That's the only problem. He's done a brilliant job at Como, and he plays great football. He's done a brilliant job at. He's the kind of manager I think people want, an up-and-comer. Not him specifically, but like an up-and-comer who plays good football, who's got different ideas about football, and maybe can be ahead of the curve and thinks differently to maybe other people. He could obviously. I don't know if he would take the job.
Literally, I feel like I want to throw up. Cesc Fabregas, you want to see manage Tottenham? Come on.
Just from a manager perspective, purely. Wouldn't be the worst option.
What about Michael Carrick? Any sort of love for a player like him or a Scott Parker, like an ex-Tottenham guy?
If we're going to go down that route, you'd probably go maybe McKenna, who's I know just got relegated, but maybe we just do a company, get him in, and hope that he can upscale his kind of tactics to better players, kind of thing. And former Tottenham coach as well. There's a lot of buzz around him. He got offered the Chelsea job and the Man United job, didn't he? Last summer, and he turned them both down.
Be the best shout out of those three. Scott Parker worries me because every time he comes into the Premier League, he's terrible. Goes back down straight away. In the Championship, he does brilliantly, but there's also a sentiment to say, he's a young manager learning his trade. Can he do better with better players? Although you look at some of the teams he went down with, doesn't look good for him.
Yeah. How about you, Ben? What's your number one choice?
Mine is Glasner. I've said Glasner for a while. I mean, I first said Iraola, but I'm not too... I don't know. There's just something about Iraola that doesn't sit right with me at this moment in time. But I think Glasner, and I think, the squad that we do have is well suited to play that system, 3 at the back. I've always said it, I think we've built a team now that would be brilliant for Antonio Conte, and I think it'd be brilliant for Oliver Glasner as well. And probably we'll get Glasner in, and in a few years' time we'll have a team perfect for Ange Postecoglou. So this is just the way that we run this club, unfortunately.
Yeah, always a day late and a dollar short, or whatever they say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think it's a clean conversation. I think that there's always going to be risk. What about who was I going to say? Any interest in like a De Zerbi, someone like him? There's links to him at the moment, isn't there? But I just feel like he would have Daniel Levy's throat, like he's got that around Daniel Levy's throat within about 5 minutes. I don't think he's the right guy.
De Zerbi will end up finishing the way Conte finished.
I'm sure you'd love his press conferences, Sean.
Yeah, probably, mate. Probably. I had a problem with it at some point, though.
The thing is, though, I don't really like this conversation about new managers and about anti-Ange and all that kind of stuff. And I've been banging the drum with that all season. I really have. But when we're sitting here a week before a final, I just feel we just need to be 100% Ange in at this moment in time.
Well, I'm 100% behind him for the next week, for sure. 100%. And if he wins, I will absolutely give him the credit because he's done what no other manager's done. I'll give the players all the credit, and I'll give Daniel Levy the credit because apparently the buck stops at the top. So it's not an argument that I like to present. I personally don't think that Daniel Levy will be responsible for the successes, just like I don't necessarily hold him entirely accountable for the failures. I think it's more of it's an overly simplistic argument, right? To just say that let's just abdicate responsibility for people that are employed and paid very well to do their job. But apparently the buck stops at the top. So if we do win, then I'm looking forward to seeing people who would never normally give credit to Daniel Levy giving it because they make the argument that everything that's happens at Tottenham Hotspur is his responsibility. So be interesting to see the outcomes there.
But 17th.
It's true. That's true. Good point. Good point. Well made.
Do we trust Don Fabio to appoint a new manager?
Yeah, Paulo Fonseca. Paulo Fonseca is going to be our next manager.
Gattuso. The managers he had lined up was.
That's a fair point.
And he picked Nuno. I know Nuno's is a good manager, and obviously maybe just not right guy, wrong time, just wrong fit. But it wasn't exactly like a great lineup, was it? When Fabio?
No, listen, mate. I spent a lot of time, obviously, with Johnny and with Dave, Irish Hotspur, and those guys wax lyrical about the Don, non-stop, and think that he's like the second coming of Christ or whatever. And I'm like, we can remember all of the good purchases that he, was responsible for, but there was some stinkers in there as well along the way. I don't think he's. I don't think he's the Messiah or whatever. I think he's good, and I think it would be great if he came back in and had some conditions in his contract because I think that he's got the leverage to be able to say, you want me back? Okay, well, I want to have final say, or I want to have more control, or I want to have these things and contractually stipulated line items. And I think that he could work well maybe with Vinny, but do I think that duo is going to magically transform us towards this team that gets a higher percentage of our transfer strategy right? Not sure. I think he had a good track record. Whatever he did with the youth team looks like it was a relative success. But as I say, there were some good signings amongst his first team acquisitions, but there were also some stinkers too. And I just think that the quality in the league is so tough right now, and it's becoming like a new world order in football with the Aston Villas and the Newcastles that are emerging. It's not going to be easy. And if Tottenham are a team and everybody else are a team that just expect Champions League qualification every year, I think that's going to be, there'll be more disruptions to other teams in that kind of ecosystem that are built and set up with cost structures that require Champions League revenue to sustain it. Because I think that there's more and more teams that are sort of champing at the bit to participate in there. The quality is it's tough, right? So it's going to be interesting. But do I think Paratici's going to be like, the saving grace? Not necessarily, but I'd rather him here than Johan Lang. Do you guys?
Yeah, I think they'll work alongside each other, and I think Johan Lang will probably, focus more on the youth recruitment, which he's done very well at since he's coming to this club. There's no two ways about that. And Paratici will be the one overseeing the whole ship, I think.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it for sure. But there are some monsters out there in the director of football kind of role, right? Like the guy who was at PSG for a long time. Isn't he going to? Has he just gone to Manchester United, or is he go? I'm trying to think what his name is.
Who? Luis Campos, Paul Mitchell.
Luis Campos, yeah, Luis Campos.
Campos is number one, isn't he? He's number one. I mean, he's the one that's overseen, isn't it, this PSG rebuild?
I think the guy from Inter would be the one I would want. I don't know. I can't remember his name. Right, yeah. I think he knows how to work on a budget, and he knows how to build a squad with limited resources. He's done it time after time, and Inter keep challenging, keep winning, being right at the top of Serie A, and also they've made 2 Champions League finals in the past 3 years, all while losing players consistently, players like Hakimi, players like Lukaku, always reinvesting that money, even getting free transfers. They're unbelievable in the free transfer market as well, and I think all under
Would
the
that
guise
work
of
in the
limited
Premier
budget.
League though?
Why not? You think this Inter team wouldn't work in the Premier League?
I mean, potentially, but you got players like Henrik Mkhitaryan like doing really well for them. Like he was crap for Arsenal.
Okay, well maybe that's an Arsenal thing. I think if, there's a reason they've made 2 Champions League finals in 3 years and won the Serie A, could win it again this year. It's on a knife edge at the moment, but I think he would be the one that I would say if Levy wants someone who can really work under certain. In a strict capacity, he's proven. I think at Inter, I think before Inter as well, he's proven he can do a phenomenal job, and is always finding solutions.
Before Inter,
can't remember. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. But
must have been phenomenal then.
No, I read somewhere before Inter as well. What's his name?
Marotta.
He also did a good job before Inter as well. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, you got Marotta who's rebuilt that squad, but I mean, the key thing for them has been Inzaghi, hasn't it? He's really
under Conte as well. They won the league.
Well, I mean, 2 brilliant managers, aren't they?
Yeah.
They've also got the draw. Don't forget, right? Obviously Italian football doesn't have the resources that the Premier League does across the park, but what they do have. It's similar to the kind of predicament I think that Tottenham are in sometimes when if you want to close the gap on the boys at the top, like the big 5 that win all the trophies or most of them, then you either have to go out there and find nuggets of gold on a consistent level, or you have to try to compete with the best names out there that are emerging. And unfortunately, we saw it with the likes of Luis Diaz, but not just him. There's a never-ending stream of examples. Look at Manchester City, right? When Manchester City want to go and sign Mamouche, for example, there's no sales pitch that's necessary. There's no ability. There's no need for Pep Guardiola to get on the phone, or like there is for Ange Postecoglou to try and twist their arm to come here and do the sales spiel. It's no, I'll come to you. Of course I will, because you're going to pay me decent money. The club is not going to worry about the fee if they've identified the player, and you have the draw of the trophies, right? If you're going to City or even latterly Manchester United, despite they're in their their quagmire of consistency, they're still able to convert trophies, fairly regularly. Same with Liverpool, and obviously Chelsea also got the benefits of that whole era, that an ecosystem that started with Roman Abramovich, whereas Tottenham don't have that draw, so you have to get on the phone and compete. And if you're going after the players that those teams are going after, you're probably going to miss out. So you go to that second tier, and then you end up overpaying for players that are not really good enough to make the difference anyway. And so, like, you have teams like the Brightons and the Brentfords that have that amazing ability to identify brilliant up-and-coming players and pay 5, 6, 10 million pound, whatever, for them. Tottenham can't do that. They should be able to by now, by the way. We've been talking about data systems for however many years, and yet we still don't have anything like a model that's like even fit to lace the boots of what Brentford and Brighton have got with Star Lizard and whatever Blenheim's version of it.
What do we use? Do you know?
Probably Y-Scout, to be honest. Just give me a call. I've got a subscription, Daniel. No, I don't know what we use, but like, you know, I was looking at Bloom's. He's gone and bought a 26% stake in Hearts, right? So another plug in there, like a minor, and it's only cost like I think he spent like 12 million quid or not even maybe that on it. Like to Brighton, it might be a decent sum of money, but for Tottenham, that's a couple of Beyoncés, you know. And for me, I think that there's so many missing pieces to our overall jigsaw. I'm not saying that Tottenham ENIC were the groundbreakers on multi-club ownership back in the 90s. Obviously, we had to divest. Our owners divested the interest in Rangers and Slavia Prague and all that stuff for Chenza because the UEFA rules, like, we didn't cross the line crossed us. But I'm not saying that they necessarily saw those multi-club ownership models as the same way it's viewed today, which is like all the transference of skills and acumen and all those things. They just probably saw it as monetary and financial vehicles to make them more money. But we've got a history of doing it, and there's a missing piece there that other teams around us have the benefits of, because if you can go and plug into an ecosystem and there's a pecking order that's clearly delineated, then you can create, like what City Football Group have done, but on a smaller level. You can go and buy a team and make that team play to your same sort of system, and the loans and all that. You know, it all kind of makes sense for relatively small sums of money. And the other thing is, why do we need to like go and build our own data strategy? Why don't we just go and buy a fledgling data mining company that operates already in sports betting, just like what Star Lizard does at Brighton? There's loads of them out there. There's loads of them, and they are already built and set up and have brilliant people, brilliant minds that are data scientists that come out of Cambridge or Oxford or whatever else. Just go and buy one of them for like 15 million quid and plug it into your ecosystem. And I'm sure it's not as simple as I'm making it out to be. I'm sure it's more complex than it looks. But we've been talking about this for 2 years. The club said themselves that they were going to move in that direction about 18 months ago. And what it looks to me is the way that we use data is that our like people like Lang identify the players that they want and then go and plug them into the data and then validate the opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. Versus look through the data for what you need and then go and filter it out and find 25 players around the world and then go and send your scouts out into that region to go and figure out whether they're the right fit. I think we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit in the method, but like I say, you know, like there's no disgrace in acknowledging that other people are better at doing things than you are. And I think that Daniel Levy should really just like, you know, go and buy a company that's set up. There's, as I say, there's dozens of them out there, more than dozens. There's like, I can name probably 10 that are on the New York Stock Exchange, right? So like, just go and pick up one of them, and a lot of things becomes a lot easier, right? Because like I said, sorry, this is a long-winded answer, but like the inability to go and compete with the biggest teams for the best names because you don't have the draw means you have to fish in a different pond. And when we fish in that smaller pond, we overpay for the most part. Most of our bigger purchases have been mistakes, right? Most of them. So just, you know, change it up a little bit, and I think we could have some material results.
Sean, what do you think about the financials in terms of, you know, Levy coming out saying we need to sell to buy, and someone on TalkSport, you know, was breaking down the numbers and say Spurs just really don't have any money to spend this summer. And, you know, with however many years we've been in the stadium now, was it 6 or 7, supposed to be game changing and all that? Do you buy into, you know, everything that they're saying at the moment? Is it true?
I think what Stefan Borson, I think you're talking about, he said was sort of true with regards to cash flow. There's definitely impacts of cash flow, like not having those merit point rewards, like losing out on £30 million. That money's paid out immediately, right? So it's not like a transfer where you sell a player and then you get that paid in installments and yada yada yada. That money's just paid by the Premier League at the end of the season, I think. And so cash flow is different to profitability. And look, so there's an element of truth to what he's saying. But do I think that Tottenham are skint? Absolutely not. No chance, no way, no. Like, we do owe £260 million in player trading liabilities, but that's spread out over 5 years. We don't know the details. I've looked through the accounts, but there's no detail on how much is owed when and to who and for who. But there's a lot of money that's owed. But there's also £360 million that's in cash that's sitting in the subsidiaries of 13 or 14 different Tottenham Hotspur subsidiary accounts, right, for the hotel or for the stadium or whatever else. So there's money here and there. And so, I think I did a video about this with Johnny. I said, I'm always happy to criticize Daniel Levy where I think it's necessary. And I think that on this one, Daniel Levy needs to be a little bit more creative with his accounting. He is already being creative with the accounting. The fact that there's 14 subsidiary accounts and that there's money sat here and everywhere that may or may not be allocated for certain things. But at the end of the day, I think that you have to keep your eye on the prize and recognize that because of this kind of moving of the wind with regards like the competitive threats within our Premier League, I think you have to recognize that if you were to not win the Champions or the Europa League this season and then you were to cry poor, when you're not poor, you might just be cash illiquid temporarily, then you need to get creative with the accounting to move Rob Peter to pay Paul temporarily and allow it to happen. Otherwise, you'll get left behind, because I think that there are, if Manchester United beat us, then they have the draw and they have the money again, right? And Aston Villa will probably be in the Champions League. Newcastle will definitely be in the Champions League. City aren't going anywhere. Arsenal aren't going anywhere. Liverpool aren't going anywhere. Chelsea have got the Club World Cup. They're going to earn more money from the Club World Cup than most teams earn from the Champions League, from an average campaign in the Champions League. So, there's threats everywhere, and I don't believe the narrative that Tottenham are poor. I can understand the narrative that we're cash illiquid at the moment, but like I say, there's the ability for them to do the things that Chelsea's owners do, move money around on a bit of paper, be clever with it, and see the wood for the trees. That these guys are all cash flow forecasters, right? Cash flow forecasting is the number one basic premise of how you make sure that you've got enough money to keep the lights on today and also tomorrow, so that your opportunities in the next couple of years can still present themselves with good outcomes. But if Tottenham don't find a way to have some budget this summer, even if we don't lift the cup, then I think we are going to be the team that gets left behind. If we win the cup and we get clever, then we can get back into the mix, and hopefully with Paratici and Vinny, we can make some smart decisions. But it couldn't. I've said it 1,000 times. I'm sure you guys have as well. Like, it couldn't be more black and white. The difference between how we handle the next 90 days of our Tottenham existence is going to determine a hell of a lot for the next 5 years.
Does anyone know where we're sitting on the whole PSR situation? Can we still spend a significant amount on?
Yeah,
we can. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's no issue. I mean, bear in mind that the PSR thing is largely irrelevant if you're not in Europe anyway. The 70% threshold is only important if you're in Europe. If you're not in Europe, then all you have to do is just not lose £105 million over 3 years, right? So, and we're not in any way going to breach that. So if we are going to qualify for Europe, if we do it via the cup, then we're still nowhere near the 70%. There's £80 million wiggle room in my calculations from last season's numbers. And last season's numbers, not to bore people, but there was only a 4 or 5% drop off from the season before in terms of revenue. And you have to bear in mind that last season we had the fewest games in Tottenham's history, and the season before we were in the Champions League, right? So it was massive difference, and yet we only fell behind by 5%, largely down to the commercial side. And next season, we're going to have double the amount of non-match day events. So if there is any argument to what Stefan Borson was saying, it's about short-term cash flow, and it's real. But like I say, there's the opportunity to move around numbers on a piece of paper to be able to circumvent that. And Daniel Levy has to. Otherwise, we're going to be in problems. And, everything we've been building could be undone in 6 months.
And next year, with the Champions League revenue plus the even more events at the stadium, we should be absolutely 100%. Swimming in it.
100%, exactly. So that's why winning this trophy is more important than just getting the monkey off our back. It's about what it can provide us in terms of opportunity, and of course having that draw of being a trophy. You suddenly do have the draw that you don't necessarily have relative to the other teams that do have it.
Do you see?
It's always bloody next year with Tottenham, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is always.
Do you think if Tottenham get Champions League, they'll have financially a big summer? Do you predict that?
Yeah, I said that I think that there'll be a club's highest earner and a club or a club transfer record this summer if Tottenham win the Champions League. I still think there'll be a new club's highest earner anyway.
Well, regardless, even if we wouldn't lose in next week,
surely there's going to have to be, with the amount of wages we've got off the book. Timo Werner leaving as well this summer. So much wages have gone over the past last 2 years.
Yeah,
there just has to be, surely.
I was kind of I was really hoping that Tottenham would sell Romero, and not that I really want him to go, but if it looks like he's going to go, how do you go about replacing him? And I thought the smartest decision would have been to go and get Jonathan Tah, free transfer, and you make him the club's highest earner, and that ticks that box so that I'm not in the mud.
Sounds like he's going to buy.
Yeah, sounds like he's going to buy in Munich. But there's other players out there, and that we can. That I think that this year's free transfer list is the juiciest it has been for a long time. There's a lot of good players on that out of contract.
Who's on there?
Pulisic is on there. Aino from Nottingham Forest. Kenny Tete. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne, Jonathan Tah, Ben Davies, obviously Eric Von Dyer. I know he's gone to Monaco now. When I did that article, when I did that video, it was about a month ago. There's probably 10 players that I think are competent. I think Boscagli as well. I think Boscagli, I'm not sure how you say it. He's a really decent centre back that can play off the left-hand side as well. Jonathan David, of course, yeah. Forgot about him. I mean,
Angel Gomez, yeah.
Angel Gomez, yeah. There's a lot of talent out there, right? And I'd actually imagine that Tottenham will probably go for Angel. I'm not sure I really want Angel Gomez, if I'm entirely honest. I'm not a massive, huge fan of his. I think he's okay, but he's a bit of a kind of a bit of an everything guy, like a jack of all trades. But I'm not sure if he's the master of one, and if he's going to come in and be the kind of, I don't know, are we going to play with a double 8 next year or a 6? That's not how I see him. But Jonathan David obviously clearly would be the number. I think that makes so much sense, right? So if you can find a way to get that done, then he'll be the new highest earner for sure at the club. And I think he'd be brilliant. He'd be a brilliant sort of tandem with Solanke. I think it'd be sensational. So
where are you at, Sean, with the Tell situation? Do we sign him? I know it'll probably be a lower fee than the 50 million quoted in the summer. But I mean, from what you've seen so far, do you have high hopes that maybe he probably obviously can improve because he's a young player. But from what you've seen so far, is that enough to suggest, we should be spending the money on him?
Certainly not 50 million quid. Obviously not 100% no. If that's the sticking point, then see you later. I'm in probably the unpopular camp on this one, like usual. But I genuinely do look at Matisse Tell and think that he's got something about him. Although I had a debate, it wasn't even a debate to be honest, because I sort of acknowledged that the data and the stats don't support my argument. If you look at the stats, he doesn't look like he creates very much, but stats only tell you a no context story. So, but I look at the player and I see a guy who works really hard. He's got a point to prove. And I think that he's demonstrated enough to me to think that there's something there. So I'd like to see him at the club next season, as long as it didn't, mean that it gobbled up a large slice of whatever budget we have. If we could make the deal another loan deal, or a very cheap initial fee with a huge sell-on fee, like a percentage going to Bayern, whatever. If you can make it work so that it doesn't absorb too much of the budget, then I like him. I do. The other question, I guess, the other part of the conversation is: does he cock block other players in our youth system? And I think there's definitely an argument to say that maybe he does. We've got enough wingers on that side of the pitch, but just as a player, generally, I do really like him, and he's got a lot. He's very raw. He's got a lot to improve on, but I see something in him that the stats don't validate. But just on my gut instinct, I like him. What do you guys think?
Just before I tell you my opinion, but who do you think's shown more this season on a whole, him or Mikey Moore?
Matisse Tell, for sure.
So I think Mikey Moore's shown more.
I just, people think that I've got this, like, I don't like Mikey Moore. I do. I really want him to be good, and I think he's done glimpses. But I just think that just because he's 17 and one of our own, that means that we have to give him, we put him in a special category. And I'm not like that. I'm like, if you're good enough, you're old enough. But when you're old enough, you're then compared to everybody else that's competing for your position. And I just don't think that he's ready yet. I don't think that he's shown me enough.
But he's in his best performance, Sean, in again, Alkmaar, Ferencváros in the Europa League group stages. Like, we haven't seen anywhere close to that from Matisse Tell.
I think Matisse Tell has been wildly underrated by people. Again, I know I'm in the minority. I know that 9 out of 10
have we seen
people...
that level of performance that we saw from Mikey Moore in those games? I don't think we have.
I don't know. I mean, it's a subjective thing, mate. I'm not going to sit here and tell you anyone's right or wrong about it. I personally see. I think that, you know, against West Ham in a team that no one cared, I think he cared, and I think that ball that he split through, you know, an inch to the right or left to Odebear's tap in, and it hit someone's foot, right? So he spread that through the eye of a needle. I thought that was impressive. As I say, I think that when he came on the pitch, I think against Liverpool, I thought he was sort of busting a lung to. I think his work rate. Again, I know that people think that work rate is irrelevant unless there's output, but like I look at people like Dominic Solanke and think that a lot of Dominic Solanke's output is recognised in players like Brennan Johnson's numbers, because Brennan Johnson doesn't get the space that he gets or the time that he gets if Dom Solanke's not working tirelessly. And I think you could make, I would make a similar argument for Matisse Tell. I think work rate is important, especially in a system that is kind of organised around workhorses. You only got a little bit of space for show ponies. And I don't think Matisse Tell is a show pony. I think Matisse Tell works really hard. And I think he does have skill. And I think he's definitely rough and raw and makes mistakes with his decision making at the end. But there's something about him. Again, I can't really justify it apart from to say just like that's how I feel. I just you know, I like him as a player, and I think he'll be a good player for Tottenham.
Yeah, I like him too. I agree. I also agree we need to renegotiate that fee. But I think there's a few games. The first of all, he's been improving as kind of time's gone on. He's only been here a few months. You got to remember, like I was saying, like, you know, someone like Bergvall, like it took him 6 months to really adapt before we saw really him consistently playing well. And I think Tell obviously hasn't been afforded that time because we have to make a judgment a lot quicker on Tell than we did on Bergvall, who's obviously got a longer contract. But I think since he's come in, when he first came and he was playing up front and he was out of position in an injury-riddled team, and it was very, very difficult for him to influence games. I do think he's been getting better, but you know, obviously, if you're making a judgment based on what we've seen, you know, it's hard to justify spending a massive amount of money on him just based on what we've seen in these few games that he's played, because he hasn't really like hit the ground running, or he hasn't really scored many goals, or he hasn't really made that much of an impact in quite a lot of games. But I think under the circumstances, as the games have gone on, I do think he's been getting better and better, impacting games more. And you got to remember, he's still a teenager. And I think you got to remember, like, there's not, you know, as a teenager, before doing that in the Premier League, people overlook that because we're looking to spend a lot of money on him. But it's still impacting games as a player of his age. And I think that goes kind of overlooked, and because he's, you know, we're judging him as if he's like a player maybe who's more experienced at an older age, because that's kind of how we have to, given the small sample size and small time we have to judge him on. But if you just judge him as a teenager performing in the Premier League, I think he's doing pretty good.
But that's what he's come in as. He's come in as a 6 month loan spell that's supposed to make an instant impact. That's
correct.
What he's come in as.
That's what I'm saying. That's why we're judging him like that. I agree. Yeah.
That's what his purpose is.
Well, not necessarily. If he's here
when
long-term.
he came in to make an instant impact because we had injuries and.
No, I agree with that. But if he's here long term, then it won't matter how we did in his first.
Let me put it this way, yeah. If we go into next season with Matisse Tell, Sonny, Moore, like the wingers that we have now into the Champions League and try and get us in the top 4 next season, is it good enough? No, and what more do we need to make it good enough?
No, you need a top draw forward this summer. I like a Jonathan David playing in the 9, or I know this particular name is never going to happen, but someone of the kind of stature of like a Rafinha who can play off the right and just, you know, has that wow factor, but also the output. If you mix that in with the youth that we have, then I think that there's the opportunity to be able to develop. I'd also argue, I think that, you know, if you it's talking about like a day late and a dollar short, always having, you know, the right pieces but at the wrong time. Someone like Ivan Perisic, I know he's no longer now, but he would have been great for some of these young guys to have learned off of.
Have you seen the form this guy's on? Ivan Perisic is mad what he's doing in the Eredivisie. It's mad.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane, mate. I mean, the guy's built like a machine, right? But he is. It's just, I think that there's a need for someone at the club. And again, I don't necessarily know if Sonny, and this is no disrespect to him, he seems very young at heart and very kind of like playful and happy all the time and stuff. But it doesn't necessarily reflect his age, right? And I feel like I don't know if he's the guy that you can necessarily look to be like a mentor in the same way that you could look at someone like an Ivan Perisic and maybe think that there would be a beneficiary, like a byproduct benefit of having an older sort of statesman around the club that can like sort of distribute some of their experience. But yeah, like with Matisse Tell, I don't know what the right price is, but I think there is a price where it makes sense. But it's certainly nothing like the money that's currently on the table for the negotiation.
Yeah, I feel just like we need a top winger to come out on the left that you know, that doesn't need this development from a teenager into a young 20s. I think we need someone in the mid 20s already, or at least someone in the early 20s that's had a lot of experience that can come in and make a real difference right here, right now, as opposed to, you know, bedding them in and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I always say that those wingers are 10 a penny. Like in this day and age, like if you're handy, you're fast, you're nippy, and you got some skill, you go to any team, right? And there's always one of those sorts of players. But then I look at players that we've all wanted forever, like a Nico Williams, and I watched him in the in Europe this year, and I was like, you know, he
hasn't had a good season, Nico Williams.
Yeah, he's got like you know, hot flashes, if you like, and I just think that you need consistency. You need someone that you can put on the pitch for 70 minutes and just make a difference. Get the ball to him, as you know, 5 or 6 times, and you know that 50% of them are going to end up with getting to the byline or cutting inside, unpredictable on both feet, and can make things happen. And if the ball does fall to him, he's not going to waste his opportunity. If you could merge the output of like a Brennan Johnson with the input of an Odebear or someone like that, then you might have someone that's really useful. When like I say, I used to look around when I was working with Y Scout earlier on the season and last year. I was like, there's so many of these. They're everywhere. Now I look around and I'm still scouring, and I'm like, I'm like, he's not the guy. And I just end up filtering these people out, and I'm left with very few that are realistic opportunities. So it's a difficult decision, but it's one that we need to like work on for this summer, because it's an important area of the game and an important area of our team.
We probably need one on the right hand side too. You know what I mean? Like someone to challenge.
I think more so on the right hand side than the left hand side, if I'm honest. You know.
So we're not going to sign 2 established goal scoring wingers, are we?
No, we're not.
The one on the right hand side, I mean, you got to have a look at Brian Mbeumo. I mean, he's probably the one that know that would move the goalpost for us.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually amazed. Like everybody in the Tottenham YouTube space and everybody in the comment section, I've never seen anybody. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 that are doing it now in the chat. I'm not looking at the chat, but I've never seen anybody in any comment on any video ever disagree that Mbeumo would be a brilliant acquisition, not just for us but for anybody. But yet it's taken 2 or 3 years for him to have even like any noise around his transfer away from Brentford. It's very surprising. And all of a sudden all the big teams want him. You know, Newcastle want him, Tottenham want him, United want him, Chelsea are looking at it, even though they've got 400 wingers. You know, what about Cherki? Would you take Cherki?
Yeah, 100%. He's absolutely exploded this season. What he's done this year for Lyon has just been incredible, to be honest. You look at the French team of the year, you know, dominated by PSG players. 8 or 9 PSG players in that team of the year, and Ryan Cherki somehow made his way in there. I mean, there's always been, you know, conversations about him, haven't there? So, and no one's ever been convinced. But I think this year he's convinced everyone.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
It'll be a nice dynamic as well. Like if we did to sign Tell, you've got Odebear, Tell, Cherki all playing with each other at youth level internationally as well.
Yeah, that sort of thing's important. Like you don't know what the value of that is, but having your mates around you and stuff can bring out the best of you, right?
Or someone like Yakuba Minte. from Brighton.
I would like him. I think he's a top talent, Minte. I really do. I think, he's coming to Brighton. He was forced to leave Newcastle because of PSR and everything like that. Mm-hmm. Newcastle didn't want to sell him. The fans didn't want him to leave. And he's gone into Brighton, and I think he's had a really good season. I think we'll be lucky to get him. I remember going to Brighton when we were 2-0 up at half time. That guy was destroying us.
He's good, and I think he's getting better and better as the season's gone on.
Yeah.
The problem is, there is always a number with Brighton to sell.
Yeah.
It's usually a very big
7
number.
times higher than
it's usually a very big number. That's the thing, yeah. But they will sell, like they're happy to sell, but for a big price. You have to stump up the cash.
Look, guys, I think I need to go. But Shawnee, big up to you, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Enjoyed the chat.
What's your journey to Bilbao? Tell the people.
What's my what?
Your journey to Bilbao. How are you getting there?
I got a lounge at Heathrow Airport for several hours before I get on the plane, and then I'm flying direct from Heathrow to...
Direct? Mr. Moneybags over here.
No, I was just early, mate. I took a stab in January. I booked my ticket, my flights, and my accommodation in January, so I got ahead of the curve by having some faith in Big Ange. So, I thought we were going to get there, and we have. So, yeah, going straight to Bilbao for Tuesday, and then Henry Wright's going to be bunking with me. So he's in for 3 days of absolute torture. And
are you staying in Bilbao? Are you staying in Bilbao?
After seeing you two together in Bodo, that's a dangerous combination, mate.
Yeah, he's good fun. I love Henry to bits. And so I'm staying about half a mile from the stadium, maybe like a quarter mile from the stadium or something. So I can't wait. It's going to be an awesome few days.
Ben could explain his journey to Bilbao. We might be here another hour though. He does.
Yeah, I'm flying into Lourdes in France, and then I'm getting the train from Lourdes to Biarritz, meeting up with Amir, and I've got a car. I'm going to be driving to Bilbao 2 hours from Biarritz.
Where are you staying?
In Bilbao.
Are you staying in Bilbao? Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
I'm staying in Basauri, which is just outside of. It's like 15 minutes away from Bilbao.
Nice. And you boys, Ben, you said you leave on Monday. When do you leave?
Tuesday. Fly to Malaga, 2 hour stopover. Arrive in Bilbao in about 4 o'clock on Tuesday.
Nice.
And then leaving Thursday 2 p.m.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I'm staying till Friday. So I thought, just in case if we don't win, it will be a torturous Thursday, just hanging around going, what are we doing here? Can't wait to go home. But if we win, watch out, Bilbao.
You won't have slept. You're not going to sleep till Friday.
I've heard a little rumor that if we do win, I don't know how true it is, but if we do win, then this parade is going to be on the Friday. I don't see how that's feasible.
What, the day before the Brighton game, or 2 days before? Surely not. Surely bank holiday. Surely bank holiday Monday.
Yeah, that's what makes sense, doesn't it?
Surely can't be 2 days before the game.
I'll be doing my own parade.
Drinking beers on the open top bus a couple of days before the game. Well, I guess who cares at this point?
If they dare have the beer parade without me there, I'll go apoplectic. I'm leaving out. If that happens, I am leaving out.
Clip it.
There's your clip.
The whole. We're going to rename the stream. Sean is now Levy out. Big up to you, Shawnee. Go subscribe to his channel as well, which is pinned to the title.
Talk show.
Big up. Spurs Talk Show. Obviously, you know where he is.
Come on.
But Sean, see you in Bilbao, my friend. Very much looking forward to it. And you guys out there, thank you very much for joining us for this 2 hour panel show. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always,
come on, you Spurs.